I don't know what it was, what it's like now, but in my time at IIT 30 years ago, it used to be pretty tense the week before exams. So, you know, I wouldn't have come for a lecture like this, but I'm glad and grateful that you have. So, I graduated from IIT Bombay, as he said, almost exactly 30 years ago. It was 1985. And so what I thought I'd do today is not give you advice, because I still hate advice, but I'll give you some perspectives on managing a career. Okay? I think that's important, because a career is not just the first thing you do after IIT. You know, it's not the startup that you do or the startup you join. It's what you do over 40 or 50 years. So you need to have a planning horizon or a rough game plan for 5 decades, which is seriously long. So let me start out by taking a few minutes to just tell you about my own journey and then reflect a bit on that. I'll try and get done in about 30 minutes so that we can then, you know, talk about it. You can ask some questions. So as I said, I got into IIT and I don't remember much of what I learned, but I remember one thing. It was, I remember humiliation and humility. Okay? I thought it was fairly good, and then I came there, and then we had our first physics exam, and I said, oh my God, what, you know, where have I landed? And the same thing happened in second year maths, and then in really, a truly moment of truth was machine design. I studied mechanical engineering. And I remember the exam because I got 18 out of 100, okay? And I felt really bad. And then I was shocked, I got a B, because the average was actually 11 out of 100, okay? And the really, really humbling thing was, the guy who came, you know, was the silver medalist, got 98 out of 100. Okay, so that showed you the kind of variation there was. So anyway, I realized that in terms of intellect, I wasn't going to be near the top of my class. So what I had to do was make up through just hard work. Okay, so if I learned humility, I also learned the value of just working my butt off at IIT. Now, in those days when you graduated, unlike today, there were hardly any opportunities. Okay, so I decided, I got into IIM Ahmedabad, which seemed like a good thing. In those days, again, the ticket to prosperity was not joining Google or Flipkart. It was actually going to IIM and then getting a job at Unilever, okay? But I said, listen, this sounds really dumb. So 40 out of 55 of my graduating class, we all decided to leave. So I went abroad, I studied, but again, as soon as I got there, I realized, hey, you know this, I'm not cut out for a life of research and academics. So the faster I graduate and get a job, the better it'll be. And again, things were very different. In the US in 1986, you needed to have a green card or be a citizen to get a job. It wasn't like today, where things are a bit easier. So again, I was pretty fortunate. I ended up joining a company called Cummins Engine Company. How many of you have heard of Cummins? Oh, about half. If you study mechanical engineering, it's hard not to know about Cummins. And I didn't realize I was going to spend 16 years of my life there. It was, you know, truly a great company. Somewhere along the way, I wanted to go get an MBA. They sent me to Harvard Business School. I was very grateful for that. And then I made a big decision in 1986. I decided to come back to India. Okay? And almost everybody said, you're mad. My parents thought I was dumb. The CEO of the company called me and he said, hey, what's wrong with you? You actually have a good career here. Why do you want to go back to India? But remember, 1991, India began to open up its economy. Things were beginning to look good like they are today. And I said, I want to be part of building the new India. So let me take a chance. Anyway, I got this job as the CEO or MD of a big joint venture between Cummins and Tata Motors. The reason I got it at this age of 32, I was completely unqualified for the job. But the only reason I got it was because nobody else wanted it, okay? Now there's an important lesson here, okay? Always go for things that nobody else wants, you'll end up okay. And the reason nobody wanted it was, The job was actually closing a failing JV. Okay? And the other reason was it was in Jamshedpur. So not many really good people want to go to Jamshedpur and close a joint venture. Doesn't look good on your resume to say, hey, what did you do? I closed a company. So I said, but listen, it's okay. At 32, what else am I going to get? And I got there. And I realized the reason it's doing badly is because we're making all kinds of dumb mistakes. I fixed it, and the next thing it started to do well. And I spent the next year, a few years, till 2003, building Cummins in India into a lot of what it is today, to $1 billion business. Then something really strange happened. A headhunter, and I hope you know the term headhunter, right? It's guys who give you jobs. He called me in 2003 and said, listen, would you consider joining Microsoft? I said, I would, but it's not April 1st, because this is a pretty good joke. And the reason is, I wasn't smart about IT. I wasn't even interested in IT. In those days, email was still pretty new. I'm talking 96. No, not 96, 2003. So it's still, Hotmail was there, but Gmail didn't exist. And my secretary used to print email and give it to me in a binder. Can you imagine this? That you get 40 or 50 sheets of paper printed out, and then I'd mark it up at night and give it back to him. That was my idea of doing email. So I said, listen, are you sure you want me for Microsoft? He said, listen, just go on the plane. You'll get to meet Bill Gates. So I said, yeah, where is the chance of meeting Bill Gates after this? So let me go. And I was very honest. I told Bill, listen here, you've got the wrong guy here. He said, it doesn't matter as long as you learn. You'll at least use common sense. So next thing you know, I'm at Microsoft. All my friends, my family, people like Nandan Nilekani said, this is a bad idea. This is going to end badly. Okay? Not only do you not know anything about IT, it's a very tough company, a very tough culture. Okay? So you're going to fail. And I asked myself, listen, when I turned 50, I was 40 then. When you turn 50, what are you going to regret? That you got fired from Microsoft, or that you were too scared to even try it? And I said, let me try and fail, it's better. Anyway, I got lucky again, because in 2004, India's economy took off. You guys remember that? And I had a great team, and we built it to $1 billion business again. And then in 2010, I said, this stuff is really boring. It's time to do something else. Small problem, I knew what I didn't want, but I didn't know what I did want. But finally I said, that's not a good enough reason, and so I walked out and I tried many things, and over the last 4 or 5 years I've ended up with what I really want to do. So I'm partly an author, partly I'm an investor in early stage companies, so I think the Nirmaan team will be interested in that at 8 o'clock. And then I'm also a social entrepreneur. We build social enterprises. So today what I wanted to talk about is, I'd spent a lot of time not only looking at my own sort of career, but also looked at the lives of other people. So when I graduated from IIT, right, there were certain people we were absolutely sure, if this guy doesn't win the Nobel Prize, he's certainly going to be a, superstar of some sort. Okay, and there were others we used to secretly laugh at. Life was funny. We never heard from those Nobel guys, and suddenly the guy you laughed at ended up in the right place, and we were all pretty jealous. The same thing happened to my class from Harvard Business School. There were certain people we thought they were really destined to do something, and the people who actually ended up, on the front page of the paper were very different. So there's almost no correlation. It's very hard today to predict which are the horses which are actually going to be at the head of the race in 10 years, let alone 30 or 40 years. So what perspectives would I share with you? The first thing I'd say is, when I look at my own life, I'll say, obviously brains and IQ and all matter to some degree, but your willingness to work hard and just the sheer ambition is probably far more important than intellect. Even when I hire people for jobs, senior jobs, if you say you've got a choice between two people, a really smart person and somebody who's really hungry, I'll pick the hungry one. okay? Because they're going to do better for me and the company than the really smart one, okay? So that's clearly one thing. And so I know that I'm told that today life in IIT is very different than it was in my time. That more than half the class, checks out the moment they get in. But I'm here to tell you one thing. If you really want to do well in life, the good old-fashioned virtue of simply being hungry and working hard, it still works. The other thing I would say is, what has worked well for me is taking on the biggest challenge I could find. I see a lot of young people, they were there in Microsoft, they're there in Infosys today, etc. Where every 2 years they want to do something different. Okay, so if you're not moving to something else every 2 or 3 years, you don't feel like you're being successful. I don't think that's a good strategy. Okay? When I look at people who have truly done something useful, they're the kinds of people like me who took big risks. Okay? Took the biggest challenge, the most difficult challenge, and then spent some years making it work. So if you look at my story, right? In 1985, I could have gone to IIM Ahmedabad and got a nice cushy job at some, biscuit company. But instead, I went abroad, $20 in my pocket. Those days they didn't give us foreign exchange. My dad says, congrats, you've got a scholarship, who's paying for your ticket? Okay, so that's a really bad question. Then I had to go to the Ratan Tata Trust to get the money for the ticket. So that was a hard decision. Likewise, in 1996, I could have stayed on in America, but there was this big challenge in India and I wanted to take it. It was a good decision. 2004, again, big challenge moving to an industry you know nothing about, and Microsoft's track record of senior executive success is very, very poor. Okay? But again, you take the big challenge, spend the next few years making it successful. You ask Narayan Murthy, how many jobs have you had? Okay, I think he's a success, right? How many jobs do you think Narayan Murthy will put on his resume? Huh? Yeah, 2. First one is joined Patni Computers. Next thing he'll say is started Infosys. And that's the end. Okay? So if you look at truly successful people, they don't do many things. They do few things really well. Okay? So that would be something that I would say. I was talking to one of your friends up there, and we just talked about risk. When I was quite young, I saw a lot of old people. Old people means 70s, 80s. And when I saw that, I saw a lot of them having regret. And the regret that I saw was not, they tried something and they failed. The biggest regret was they never tried anything. Okay? So somebody was asking me, I want to be an entrepreneur, or should I take a job? I don't know. But I would say always take the biggest risk you can. Okay? So I would take the entrepreneurial thing, and then if I fail, there's always a job. Okay? So this idea of risk is really important. The third thing I would say when I look at success is the importance of teams. Okay? In IIT, you're all what are called lone wolves. What matters is how you do. Okay? That's all. How well you study, how well you manage your life, that's all. In the real world, almost nothing is going to be achieved through individual effort. If you're a poet, maybe that's fine. You can sit in a room or under a tree and write poetry. But even if you're going to be a software developer and you have to ship a product, you're going to work in a team. It's not just about your coding skills. It's about the team. So there is nothing, but nothing, which you will achieve just individually. Okay? So when I look at my success, I think so much of it has come because I had good teams around me. One of my first managers said something which I'll never forget. He said, those who work for you will make a bigger difference to your career than those you work for. Okay? That means your subordinates will decide your career more than your boss. Because they are the ones who are going to make you shine. So quite early in life, I said, let me always hire the best people I can find, particularly at things that I'm not good at. For instance, I don't like sales. I don't like this idea of going to some stranger and asking for an order. But guess what? That's what business is. Okay? So I always surrounded myself with a star salesperson. Okay? So this idea that you should figure out what you're not good at and hire really good people is something that I hope you'll remember in 10 years. Okay? Because that's going to make a big, big, big difference. So those are a few things. Oh, the last thing I would say is mentors. Okay? Mentors are like gurus. A mentor is somebody who will open doors to opportunities. A mentor is somebody who will kick you in the butt when you're doing something wrong. Mentor is somebody who will give you guidance when you're confused. Many, many young people grow up without ever having a mentor, and they're completely lost. I was quite lucky. I had amazing mentors, both in the work, outside work, even today, and that has made all the difference. The analogy is, if you go to a big shopping mall and you want to go to the top, you can go by the escalators like this. It'll take you 5 minutes. Or you can take the lift. It'll take you 1 minute. So if you have mentors, you will rise in life like you're taking a lift instead of going like this. Now let me sort of also reflect on some things which I've learned the hard way. So one of the most important things I learned is that the biggest enemy to your success is going to be who? Huh? You or yourselves. You already know it. I didn't know it. It took me about 20 years to figure that out. Slow learner. But you know, it's absolutely true. If you think about countries, if you think about companies, you think about ourselves. The real enemy is always ourselves. Think about India. Why did we get colonized? Not because the British came. It's because we were divided. Our kings betrayed each other, and we never embraced technology. So we missed out on the Industrial Revolution. We got left behind by 250 years. You ask yourself, who killed Nokia? Okay? It wasn't Apple that killed Nokia. It was Nokia that killed Nokia. Okay? They didn't embrace the new paradigm of apps. They didn't understand the importance of touch screens. They stayed, and so they, stayed stagnant. And the same thing is going to be true of all of you, which is in life, it is your inability to manage yourself or manage yourself that is going to decide how far you go. Let me tell you about a famous IITian. How many of you know about Rajat Gupta? Well, more of you should know about Rajat Gupta. Because he was an extraordinary man, or is an extraordinary man, right? He's graduated from IIT Delhi, really sharp guy, goes abroad, goes to America, studies at Harvard Business School, joins McKinsey, and becomes the CEO of McKinsey, the first Indian to ever lead a company of that size. Where is he today? Tonight. Jail. So something happened, right? He didn't know how to manage himself in a crucial way. And of course, what happens to each of us is not something as dramatic, but much smaller ways. So I think the trick to make sure that you know how you're managing yourself is something called self-awareness. Self-awareness means you know yourself, okay? You know what you're good at, but even more importantly, you know what you're not good at, okay? You will never become successful by building on what you're not good at, but you know how to need to know how to manage those things, okay? Like I said, I didn't like sales. My strategy for managing that was hire a really good salesperson, okay? Or I lead companies by being cerebral, thinking about strategy, this, that, the other. But when you run a large organization, you have to connect with people like this, okay? Because that's what gets them passionate. I was not good at that. So I always had somebody on the team who used to pump up the troops, okay? So know your weaknesses and have strategies to deal with it. That's really important. You need to know basics like how to manage your family. I see so many people who are unable to do what they need to do in their professional life because their family life is a wreck, okay? Or you need to manage your health. At 21, that may not be the most important thing. you'll see the number of people by 35, their health is absolutely pathetic. Big paunch, diabetes, how are you going to run fast and run hard and have the stamina if you don't know how to manage your health? So in many, many, many ways, one of the most important things you need to do is learn how to manage yourself consciously, okay? So that's something that's kind of important. And it never ends, by the way. It never ends at 50, it doesn't end at 60. It's lifelong. I'd say another really important thing to remember is that success may not lead to happiness. In fact, the two are completely uncorrelated. Okay, it's like CPG and success. Okay, if you plot correlation 10 years and 30 years out, you'll find almost no correlation. Okay, that's the good news. Same way, whether you're professionally successful and whether you're happy in life are completely uncorrelated. So what happens to a lot of people is they're busy, you do all the right things, get the right job, you do your startup, you raise it, get funded, you do an IPO, whatever, all is good. But one day, one of two things will happen. In spite of all this success, you don't feel good, okay? You look at a lot of people above 40, that's what happens. The second thing that will happen is you slip on a banana peel and you fail miserably and you wonder what happened, okay? So, one of the things that you really have to do is start defining success on your own terms, okay? You have to start deciding for yourself, not what do others think, but rather what would I consider successful, okay? If you look at all deeply original people, okay, they never care about what the world thinks. They do what they think. I had the great fortune of working with not one great entrepreneur, but two great entrepreneurs. One was Bill Gates and the second one is Nirmaan. Okay? Two of the really amazing entrepreneurs of the last 50 years. You ask me what is special about Bill. It's not that he's smart. Okay? He is smart. But I guess in this room there's at least 5 people who are as smart or smarter. Okay? Well, one of the distinguishing things about Bill is that he doesn't care at all what others think. Okay? Which is why he drops out of college to do a startup. Okay? He does, when he challenges IBM, I don't know if you know the story. Companies like GE have tried to challenge IBM and given up and failed. And here he is 17 years old and he takes on IBM. Okay? So he doesn't care. And you take a look at all successful people, they have this quality about them. They don't follow the herd, but rather they follow their own path. Okay? And why is this herd thing important? Because right now you're about to join a herd. There's a high risk you'll join one herd. When I graduated from IIT, the herd was the one going to America. I joined it. Okay? I got carried along. When I graduated from Harvard Business School, the herd used to go to Wall Street. Luckily, I managed to avoid that one and did my own thing. Today, the herd says, hey, you do your startup. Okay? And maybe that's the right thing for you, but maybe it's not. The important thing is to begin to think about what is my passion and have the courage to do that. Okay? The last thing I would say before I open it up for questions and discussion is this importance of luck. How many of you think luck is a decisive factor in life? About half, 40%. This will change. Again, as you move along through life, and if you are at all reflective, you'll realize not 55%, but perhaps 95% of all the things that really happen to us is pure luck. Okay? It's grace. Call it whatever. You don't have to believe in a God or whatever. But it is something bigger than yourself. I look at myself and said, listen, what if I, through an accident, had been born at a slightly different longitude? Okay? Imagine I was born in Bangladesh. Or worse, imagine I was born in Afghanistan. Just small error in calculation and I manifested a little bit to the west. Game over, boss. Really. It doesn't matter what I do, how hard I work, it's game over right in the beginning. Okay? Same thing. Imagine you're born without a healthy body and a healthy mind. You wouldn't be sitting in this audience today. Okay? We take it for granted. Imagine you were born in a family that did not value education. Okay? You wouldn't be here for sure. Okay? Like this, if you go as you live and live and live, if you think about the really decisive things in your life, you marry and spend your life with. Is that a source of joy and support, or is it a source of misery? Okay? Almost all the major things that happen, you will look at and realize it's not you. And what that should enable us to do, and certainly that's what has happened to me, is allow you to feel on one hand humble, on the other hand very grateful. Okay? And as long as you remember that all this is not because you're a genius, but largely because you have good grace